everybody. My name is Dr. Rafaro. Welcome to Nehemiah African Projects. We strive to bring you content on educating on African investments and opportunities on the African continent in different African countries. This particular video is going to focus on going from remittances to investments. So a lot of our audience come from the African Diaspora, and so African Diaspora being those that maybe originally were born in Africa, migrated to the U.S., or they're second generation, maybe their parents did that and they grew up here. They could be from the Caribbean as well, anyone of African descent, or just anyone who's interested in Africa and how Africa is emerging and developing in different countries. So that's our definition of African diaspora. If you love Africa, if you have an interest, you're part of the fam. So this specific video is going to focus on going from remittances to investments, and why this really harps in the African diaspora is it's no secret. There's even one gentleman I used to listen to. He referred to it as the black tax, and you're like, the black tax? I've never heard of this. What is this? But essentially, a lot of African diaspora, they work very hard at their jobs. Sometimes they even pick up a second job for supplemental income, and will send thousands of dollars, millions of dollars every year overseas to help support family and their communities where they are from or they're connected to. And so obviously usually the primary goal is to support family that still lives there. This help supports their cost of living and the different challenges that are on the ground, maybe with currency fluctuations or overall political instability, whatever the case that may be happening on ground. Sometimes even beyond political instability and violence or things of that nature, or even civil war. So many things, but essentially remittances, we're referring here to the money that is sent to support family. Most of the cases is family and community back home. And so millions of dollars, if you look at the data, millions of dollars are sent every year, in fact every month, to various African countries. In fact, the general African fintech whole arena has boomed because of that. Looking for different various ways to send money back home. People use different apps, so not just the traditional MoneyGram and things of that nature. So we are most are familiar with this, but for purposes of those that maybe not know what I'm referring to, that is what I'm referring to. And so there's a lot of money that is sent back home that family really depends on, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. However, what we want to emphasize here is potentially a mind shift from remittances to investments, because remittances you send today and it is used today. Perhaps it's even for an emergency, God forbid it's a family gathering or something like that, something that's urgently needed. And so those situations are certainly understood, but I specifically want to harp on the ongoing remittances. And some may say, oh, but you don't understand what's on the ground. I'm not saying we completely stop that, but I'm saying there might need to be a mindset shift there from remittances to investments. Because remittances, if you continue to send money and you send money to help, yes, you're helping. However, even people understand that if I give you a fish today, you eat today. But if I teach you how to fish, then you can get more fish. You can get ample supply of fish, right? So it's more so that kind of concept that we're referring to here today, from remittances to investments. And you say, well, how can that be possible in the context of where people don't have any jobs? There's high employment, some countries even 80% unemployment. And that's true. And that's even more reason to go from remittances to investments, because what investments will do is now you're sending that same fund back home, but that fund is going to reap back a return. And so that could be in the sense of you start a project and you know that that project may actually benefit your family. You're still doing it for yourself or those connected to you, but that project is going to reap more, just like the example I gave about fishing. If I give you a fish today, you eat today, you are full, but tomorrow you're hungry. So if I teach you how to fish, then there is a return there. Then you are receiving a return. So from remittances to investments, if we now use the same funds to send investments back home, and whatever that project that you're working on, it could be for example, let's just use real estate in this context for Nehemiah African Projects, and you send an investment back home rather than a remittance, right? Then again, in this context, we're using a real estate, maybe development project. And so you send money, and at some point you pay off that project. That project is all paid up or has all the funds it needs. Perhaps you are building a house, or you purchased a house that was already built by a developer, and because you paid cash, you don't have a mortgage on it, and so now you could use that house that was an expense and turn it into a profit center. And how would you do that? You could turn it into a profit center, maybe start a bed and breakfast, maybe start a lodge business if you're near, like land for tourism and safaris, which are very popular back home. You can start an Airbnb, you can hire staff. And so now you have now turned that, what would have just been a one-time remittance accumulated over time has now become an investment, and you've now turned what was an expense into a profit center. So now you are gaining infinite returns from it. That doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be managed or there's no risk. There certainly is, but that's where Nehemiah African Projects comes into play by helping you to educate you on how to manage those risks. So going from remittances to investments is a very powerful mindset shift, because again, perhaps now some of those funds you can either, if you decide to, if you want to get some of your family involved in that venture, or if you just want them to benefit from it, at least it's better than you just sending a fish for the day and that is it, rather than putting in place a system that teaches how to fish. And perhaps that's something that your family or your community can learn from, and either way they are benefiting from it. Everybody is benefiting from it when you shift from merely just remittances to investments. So that's what we're talking about here today, and how Nehemiah, we provide a lot of education how to do that strategically, so that the diaspora can actually support their family and their community better. You now have 10 times return. You can do more. You can decide to give more, or you can decide to get family or community involved in what you're doing so that they also gain. Maybe you can even employ some of them, or again, they can still just benefit if you just want to give more. You're now able to give more, support more. That's up to you what you decide with your return. But you've now created a system, again, that is providing infinite return. And as you continue to manage the risk, rather than providing a fish for the day, you provided a system on how to fish. So I hope you enjoyed this video on going from remittances to investments. It is a powerful mind shift, and I might get a little bit of feedback, I would certainly welcome it in the comments, because people will say, oh, you don't know what's going on the ground. I'm not saying you completely stop supporting people, because that is definitely applauded and noteworthy. I am just saying that diversify into a mindset of remittances to investments, because the quicker you actually do that, the more you are able to give, because you're receiving more, or the more you're able to now actually employ people and create jobs, which has a broader economic impact, whether you decide to hire family or not. That's definitely your own personal choice. Some do not like to do business with family. I respect that. That's your choice. Some will. It's just completely up to you and your situation. And also, I would say, if you did decide to shift from remittances to investments, and you do get your family involved, regardless if it was family or not, you treat it as a business. In the case of real estate here, you treat that Airbnb as a business. So even if you do hire your family, you make sure that there are rules and systems in place that, thank God for technology. Those are some of the things that we educate on how to do that remotely, and still be able to travel and check on things. There are ways to do that beyond just handing the keys over to someone that maybe you don't fully 100% trust, because that's the reality of things. So there are ways to do that. There are systems in place. There's wonderful technology available in different African continents. And Airbnb is all about location anyway, so you have to keep that in mind when you're making your investment. In the example here that we were using for real estate and doing an Airbnb and potentially maybe getting family involved, whether it's family or not, you want to treat it as a business, and make sure you have systems in place that you can comply with certain things. So hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll keep bringing more educational content. Me and my husband are doing this actively. We're not talking about anything that's theoretical here, and we just want you all to win just like we are. So thank you again for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll bring more content to you.